hard to ensure that the children of our church had the very best. The church never had a DCE, Director of Christian Education, and when it was decided we needed one, Suzanne and I lobbied two people who were on the session at the time so we could relentlessly, I might add, we lobbied them. Those two people just happened to be Suzanne's husband, John, and my husband, Ed. Would you believe we got what we wanted? You just had to know the right people. The main thing I want to say today is what a wonderful friend Suzanne was to me and to Georgetown Presbyterian Church. There are a few people who come along in this life that are hard to replace, and she happens to be one of them. She has touched each of us in her own very special way. She would not want us to grieve for her in her passing, but would want us to celebrate her life. I, for one, am always going to remember that North Carolina drawl, her wonderful spirit, her caring heart, and the determined courage she showed, especially this past year of her life. There's a poem that I would like to share with you that I think best describes Suzanne's life. It's called A Beautiful Life. A beautiful life that came to an end. She died as she lived, everyone's friend. In our hearts a memory will always be kept of the one we loved and will never forget. And if I may add to it, I would like to share another part of a poem entitled I'm Free, because I think if Suzanne was here today, this is what she would say to us. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joy, of friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Ah, yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seems all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your heart and share with me, because God wanted me now. He has set me free. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I may engage in a little redundancy because I think this is a day to celebrate redundancy. In our heart of hearts, we'll remember Suzanne as a loving wife and mother, sister, and church volunteer, an innovator who lived life as one would hope to, honoring and devoting herself to God, her church, her family, and her innumerable friends, and to things she cared deeply about. Hers was a full life, a caring life, replete with repeated acts of kindness and thoughtfulness for others, and we celebrate that life today in all of its splendid dimensions. As has been noted, Suzanne had a charming Southern accent, which she never lost. She had a genius for friendship, which must somehow be a reflection of her virtues as a human being. From her early days in Northern Virginia and Washington at Hexagon, where she was a high kicker in the chorus line, as a staffer on the Hill at Georgetown Presbyterian Church, which she joined in 1967 after attending for several years, as Jenna noted. Her life with John and Paul and Reed and her lifelong commitment to helping others. Her home was full of good talk, lovely people, music, and laughter. To know her was to love her, and how many people there are who did. Surely no one was richer in her friends than Suzanne, and none deserved them more. She had been a teacher and was a strong supporter of the PTA, as has been noted. She loved to travel, enjoyed family picnics and time at her favorite North Carolina beach, and she devoted herself with energy and enthusiasm to several important and lasting programs and projects at this church during her decades of service to God and to this congregation. These included the children's participation in the Advent worship services and the family Christmas Eve service with the candlelight silent night at the end, and a children's music program. Now, all three are traditions of this church. Suzanne loved to laugh. She enjoyed Campbell's and Camille's jokes, and she constantly bathed us in laughter. She brought joy and charm and cheer into a sometimes dreary world, for she was a joyous soul. In her nearly 8 decades, Suzanne touched and enriched the lives of many men, women, and children, particularly the children past and present of this congregation. So far as I know, despite all the marvelous advances of medical science, there is as yet no science equipped to measure the influence of a human being. It is just as well. I would protest any scientific attempt to dissect the spirit and influence of Suzanne Rogers Bush. It is enough to know that they continue to exist and flourish. So for these qualities and many more, we thank God for Suzanne Bush, for the gift of her life among us, and for all that she has meant in the lives of those who know and love her. We know that she is in God's care, and she lives on in our hearts, but we shall sorely miss her in the days ahead, even as we are comforted by the certainty that she is today in heaven with her wonderful husband John and her talented poet sister Lucy, and spending time getting caught up with her dear friend Mary Umbarger and with many others.
As the tributes were going on, I suddenly realized that I had something else in common with Suzanne. I haven't lost my accent either. When children are young, a gathering of the family is a common occurrence, especially if you get hot breakfast. But anyway, and yet, when those same children are grown-up men with offspring of their own, a family gathering is much more of an occasion, not a mere occurrence. This is a unique occasion when we gather with a close-knit family to bid farewell for now to a beloved and very special lady, Suzanne Bush, mother, grandmother, kin to some, and friend to everybody who knew her. Anyone who to the end can hold the deep devotion of her grown family, as well as the unwavering high regard and loyalty and affection of her friends, such a one is but reaping what she has sown in bygone years of her own genuineness, loyalty, and love. Audrey and I first met Suzanne and John 33 years ago as I took part in what was a 6 weeks summer work exchange sought by the then minister of this church with someone in Scotland. I met a friend of his at a crematorium in Glasgow, and that's how it all came about, this work exchange. So obviously crematoriums are jumping off points. It turned out to be an eye-opening experience, not to mention a life-changing experience. Suzanne was an elder, just newly an elder at that time. That was her first term 33 years ago. And I always remember that party at Mary Umbarger's. Who else? But she's been mentioned, I think, twice already. And it was a party for the elders and their spouses. And Mary had the house beautifully decorated, tables of 4 all over different parts of the house. And we, John Bush and I, were sat at a table down in the basement, appropriate for us, no doubt. And John said to me, when the other two were away at the buffet, he said, how do you think you would like to live in America? Well, obviously, my answer must have satisfied him, because here I am 31 years later. Suzanne, of course, followed up speedily because she invited us. That was my Audrey, my wife, and our youngest daughter, who was then 20, Carol. The three of us